Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Silicon Insider podcast. Hi, Scott. How are
Hi,
you?
Mike.
Uh, Kind of a nice day. It's kind of good to be alive today. The world, no major, well, we've had one catastrophe, but otherwise, when you only have one catastrophe, that I guess that counts as a good day in the 21st century. So, anyway, let's start with some old news that we can kind of finish it out, and that's Intel. I've been writing a lot about Intel the last few days. I'm getting interviewed and all, but it suddenly hit me that Intel has the largest wafer fab presence in the United States on American soil, which makes it very important in a world that seems to be isolating market after market. It also is, I looked up the numbers. It's at 7 nanometers for its high-end chip. Uh, TSMC is at 1.5. Intel is the only company in America that's also within striking distance of TSMC. So having the top two companies, because TSMC is building here in Phoenix, that puts the United States well ahead of any other place on earth when it comes to the fight over the future of semiconductors and AI. So it looks like a pretty clever move. The only question is now, does Intel has the fabs, it has the technology, the recipe. Does it still have the will? Does it still have the intellectual capital to pull this off? But for the moment, it looks pretty brilliant. And I think I said last time, this could be for the Biden administration, this could be one of their most enduring successes. No one, I brought that up with the Washington Post the other day, and they said, huh, we hadn't even thought of that. So it'll be interesting if that comes out of the blue someday. Okay, next, uh, Nvidia. Nvidia hasn't had a good week, as you know. You've been following it closely, I'm sure. Uh, Apparently, it came out. It actually beat its revenue numbers, but as you've always said, it's not enough to beat the numbers. You have to be perfect, and right now, Nvidia is not looking perfect, and it lost, I think, almost a tenth of a percentage point today, Thursday. Uh, what do you think? Is there a problem there, or just high expectations, and the market's just punishing them for not being
I mean,
absolutely
punishing
or
is a hard word for a $4.4 trillion company to lose $1.40 in the stock
yeah.
market. It wasn't a bad day. It wasn't a bad week. Nvidia did fine. Right. Is it perfect? No. I mean, you can point to really strong numbers across the board. Did the data center get quite enough? When you're really parsing these things in a way that a lawyer and an accountant would when they got together to look at these numbers, you can find some flaws. And I think the potential flaw is looking ahead to whether or not AI is really as profitable as what the world needs it to be to sustain these valuations. But Nvidia itself, I mean, on the conference call, was saying everything but, hey, everything we've made for the next year is already sold. I mean, things are looking good for Nvidia. My question wouldn't be so much
By the way,
that
I
company.
should interject that what 38% of their business is data centers. So
Right.
that will seem to be the weakest part of the company's numbers this time. Is that what
As
happened?
Yeah, I mean, the one area that missed slightly was data center. But again, the stock started the day at 181, ended today at 180. So that's not much of a post earnings drop, I think. And yet, by the time people hear this, it may have moved down or up or whatever. Nvidia is such a bellwether for AI and for the market right now that overall, I think it tells us things are strong. But if you look deep into these numbers, you see that AI has not, as a technology, overall, beyond the chips, beyond the hardware, proven to be profitable. And so I wonder if now, at some point, we're going to shift the burden from NVIDIA, which has proven to be spectacularly successful, to some of these startups, the Perplexities and the Open AIs of the world, and said, hey,
Mhm.
can you guys make money? Because if not, what is all this for ultimately?
OpenAI is coming to town, right? Didn't they just announce they're going to open up an operation here or even their headquarters?
They are headquartered in San Francisco. They have been since the beginning.
But aren't they talking about coming down to Silicon Valley?
I mean, they're going to grow a lot. They are so well funded, it's crazy.
Yeah,
And yeah, they've got a big Silicon Valley presence. It's interesting that off the top you mentioned Intel, and can it get the personnel to do well and continue to innovate? And part of the problem is if you're a young, really strong engineer, are you thinking Intel right now? No, you're probably thinking of an AI startup. The question is, are those AI startups going to be around in 5 to 10 years? I don't think we have that question about Nvidia. It is going to be where the action is.
right.
That's how it rolls.
Yeah, and there goes my phone. So hang on.
It's your broker calling.
Is my broker calling yet? Um, I wanted to bring up there was a couple of things about this announcement. One of them is apparently, uh, apparently, Nvidia has among its major customers, there are two companies that are not named. And there's been a bunch of guessing. Is it, among its major, customers are Microsoft and Google and a couple others. But apparently there's two customers there that represent almost half of their business. And they've never released the names. Do you have any ideas on that? You want to speculate on that?
I mean, the speculation could really center around Elon Musk because that's the one name that doesn't get named in what we know.
Yeah,
And but it doesn't take much research or Google searches to find out that Musk has bought a ton of Nvidia chips for his own AI ventures, and they are multiple, right? I mean, we're talking
sure.
XAI, we're talking Tesla, maybe. I mean, these are, even X itself, even Twitter. So he could be the mystery in there just because he's not named, but we know he has very deep pockets and very deep AI aspirations.
Yeah, and it was interesting. He was crowing this week that he had stolen, there's been this big story about Zuckerberg and Meta, and he's paying these gigantic sums to hire the very best AI guys. And Elon was crowing this week that he'd actually stolen some of those individuals from Zuckerberg. Now I know they have this, whether it's real or not, 10-year grudge match going, but uh, does that suggest something?
No. I mean, we know this is an AI arms race, and we know that the money that's being thrown around is eye watering. And whether it's thrown around by Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, whether it's Meta, whether it's X, whether it's Microsoft, OpenAI is in there too, Sam Altman. The money is crazy. And I don't think it says anything to just say that these billionaires are trying to get a leadership position in the hottest technology right now, which is AI. And I just don't know why we speculate on things like that when what we really need to wonder about and frankly worry about for investors is what results we're going to get out of these high paid individuals and out of these crazy valuation companies. Because so far, we have some cool things. Hey, look, this draws a neat picture, or ChatGPT can answer my search slightly faster than the Google bar. But really, the AI valuations really mean that AI needs to do something spectacular and worth trillions of dollars. And I don't think I'm alone in saying we just haven't seen that yet.
There was a guy at the beginning of the electronics of the Silicon Valley era who made a prediction that when it's all over and we add it all up, the story of chips the bottom line will be red. And I often think about that, I mean, it could be 300 years in the future, but it's an interesting question. And on AI, I've kind of thought that for a while. Is it really everything is made out to be? My experiences with it, and some of these people are starting to question whether it's just supercharged search with a little, grammar app attached to it. Uh, if it's completely overblown, but we were just looking for the next big thing. I mean, a couple of years ago, you and I were talking. I said, "Where's the next big thing?" And it was already starting to appear on schedule. And maybe we're giving it too much because we needed it. We wanted it. It was time for the next big thing.
Well, if you think about where AI could potentially make money, there are a few companies likely to do it. But really, smartphones dominated by a few companies, online shopping dominated by a few companies, social media dominated by a few companies, search dominated by one company. I mean, ultimately, this stuff is overtaken by a very small number of companies who do it really well and who manage to be profitable, doing it. But think back to the dot-com boom, which wasn't all that long ago, and there were hundreds of companies that were sure they were going to be successful, and it ended up being a few companies. And think about how dependent even the small number of web companies that are successful are on either AWS or Microsoft servers. There's a very small number of companies that do these things well. And so AI, I just have a feeling, is likely to fall into that category where right now we have dozens of companies that are very exciting and sexy and getting well funded. But ultimately, sadly, even, it seems like whatever AI is going to be handled by a small number of very wealthy, gigantic tech companies that everybody else will turn to for their LLMs or their chats or whatever it is.
Well, speaking of companies that have come out of the blue and using AI, Snowflake. Hey, they had a heck of the week this week. Their stock jumped 12%, I think, in a day, posting because they had better than expected second quarter results. So they seem to be coming out of nowhere. In fact, literally a day ago, I mentioned Snowflake and to my sons, and they just started laughing. They said that's the dumbest name they'd ever heard for a startup company, but they're doing very well.
Yeah, we're starting to see some software growth in AI. And I don't know because they don't have to, necessarily say, hey, we're making this much in AI versus what we're spending. But overall, if you're a big established, company like a Snowflake, you can say, hey, we're adding AI to whatever it is that we've already done well, and now we're doing it better. And maybe that's the secret sauce. Is that worth trillions of dollars in valuations to a chip company like Nvidia? I don't know, but it's helping the snowflakes, like it's helping the Broadcoms and the Dells and the Autodesks, and good for all of them. They're sprinkling this AI pixie dust on whatever it is they do. But they're already established companies. And what they seem to be doing is taking this red hot technology and speeding up what they already do. And that's great. That's really good.
Well, it's like revived like Lazarus from for some of these companies. Like, when was the last time you even heard about Dell?
Right. Or
And
HP.
it was one of the big winners of this week.
Yeah, Dell did well. HP is doing better.
Auto,
Autodesk, it's been a minute. Yeah,
Autodesk. I don't even know. Are they still in Marin? Are they still let dogs into the office? It's been so long since I've even written about that company.
I think it's San Francisco now, but yeah, they're doing very well. They trade in the 300s. Their CEO is very well respected. I ran into him actually at the APEC thing in San Francisco. He was one of the very few CEOs invited to hear the president speak, and they're doing a whole lot. And they've already been there, designing software, all that stuff. But if you add AI to it and somehow convince investors that it's happening a little faster and a little more efficiently, they love that stuff. And they're one of those companies that's already established that can say we're using AI to get a little bit better.
Well, I'm struck that Autodesk actually may be the kind of company that would really benefit from AI.
Yeah, I mean, think about what they do and how some of it could be automated, not so that you're getting, like Hollywood could use AI a little bit, but we don't want it to have, you know,
Yeah,
actors with 18 fingers or whatever. We just want it to be a little faster, a little better on the compute. And it seems like that's what AI is doing. Remember, we've seen technologies that sometimes get a lot of hype, but end up being sort of back end compute efficient generators. And
yeah,
maybe that's AI's destiny.
yeah, you might be right. Okay, let's move on to uh, Lisa Cook has just sued the administration. Um, he wants Trump wants to remove her from the Federal Reserve, and she's going to fight it. Uh, she called the mortgage fraud accusations unsubstantiated, unproven, and also hinted at maybe a clerical error. I don't know the truth of that one way or another, but is this going to have any effect on the behavior of the Fed? I mean, she's suing the president of the United States. He's demanding she be fired. Is that going to distract the Fed? Do we want the Fed to be distracted? I mean, I'm not
I mean,
sure how I feel about that.
I don't think we want it to be distracted. I think we want it to remain independent. And our president does not want the Fed to be independent. And I think what he is looking at the Fed and seeing is an opportunity to do what happened to the Supreme Court, where you can put conservative judges and then kind of get what you want. And I think if he thinks he can change the makeup of the Federal Reserve to be made up of people that are loyal to him, he can get the economy to do what he wants. He can get interest rate cuts when he wants them. Obviously, that's not how the Fed has traditionally worked. It's been independent of the Oval
Yeah, I was going to
Office.
say, I don't care what he wants. If he can't get it, if the Fed is the way it was originally designed back in the teens of the last century to be fully independent. If
Right.
if he wants to actually change the composition of the Federal Reserve, he's going to have to go to the Supreme Court to get a ruling on it. Is everybody in the executive branch, including agencies, non-official agencies or not attached agency, does he have the power to fire anyone he wants? We know
Well,
that in the executive branch, he can. That the Supreme Court has ruled on that recently. But can he go after these external, internal agencies?
I mean, we're finding that out in real time, right? It doesn't seem like he can. And when he went after Jerome Powell was calm and collected and said, "Sorry, sir, that's not your decision to make. I have a term. I plan to serve it out." And I don't know if if Trump is then saying, "Well, I'll attack those below you, a la Lisa Cook, and try to replace people who are independent with people who are loyal." Again, that's not how the Fed has ever worked before. So I don't know if he's able to do it. He seems to be trying, and it will be something to watch in the next few days, few weeks, to see if he's able to do that and get more loyalists in there instead of independent economists.
Well, we're at the end of the Supreme Court's season, right? I mean, this probably won't even get adjudicated unless they come down with an order. Not going to get adjudicated till next spring, right?
Right.
And,
So
and Jerome
I,
Powell will be gone. I mean, uh, Lisa here might be Lisa Cook might be either exonerated on her on the claims about her mortgages or be in jail. I mean, this is maybe too late for that. It may just be one of these precedent setting things for future presidents.
Perhaps, but I think President Trump says, "I've got more than 3 years left. I'm going to try to do what I can do with a steamroller and a bulldozer." And that's how he does these things. So it's not about, it certainly hasn't been about massaging the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve says if inflation goes down, we'll lower interest rates.
Yeah,
And President Trump's response to that has been to add tariffs, which historically are inflationary.
inflationary.
So that's clearly not working with the Fed to lower interest rates. That's saying, I want both. higher inflation and lower interest rates, which usually does not happen. And that's why you have to use force, because the two don't go together.
Have you been following what's going on in Alberta?
Alberta, Canada?
Alberta, Canada. I mean, we've seen all the stuff between, Carney and Trump, and they've I don't know what's exactly is going on. They've dropped some of the tariffs and caved to Trump, but at the same time they're reasserting aluminum, some of the other things. So the fight is still going on. But simultaneously, the province of Alberta, along with Saskatchewan and maybe BC and maybe Manitoba, are beginning to talk uh, independence. Uh, the premier of Alberta has she's managed to get through a ruling about a year ago that you only need a certain number of petitioners, and it's only 117,000 in Alberta, that you can put on the ballot if you want to be disassociated from the Confederation of Canada and become an independent nation. And that vote's going to come uh, next year. And it looks like, I mean, the numbers are like 55% pro independence. Now, Alberta provides like 20% of the revenues for all of Canada because it's got all the oil and it's got, that sort of thing. And they have to pay this amount to Ottawa that gets handed out to everybody else. It never comes back to Alberta. And the people there are seriously pissed off. And just keep an eye on it because a lot of the commenters in Alberta not only say we want out of Canada, but they're talking about being the 51st state. And it's reached a level that hasn't been reached in decades since Quebec uh, talked about almost left Canada, but got bought off and by the Canadian government. This one looks like it may go through, and that's going to create a whole geopolitical mess in the United States. So I'm just saying it now because one of these days we may be getting back to that.
Alber exit. You heard it here first.
Okay, finally, a new study out of Stanford says that AI adoption is linked to a 13% decline in jobs for young U.S. workers. Uh, I'm seeing that with a lot of my kids' friends, especially my oldest son, because they're in their 30s now, and they're having a heck of a time finding any kind of employment. And these people went to top-notch schools. They went Oxford and Chicago and all of that, and they don't even get replies to their job applications. And it's a glimpse of what's coming. And the worst hit are the workers between the ages of 22 and 25, which is my youngest son, uh, that they're so exposed to AI that many of them are going to be looking for jobs for years. Is this it? Is this the damage that we have all been worried about from AI?
It is. This is the story that had me raise my eyebrows the most today. This is, I think, should be the biggest talker in tech today. We have people coming out of really strong universities with really strong credentials, and we have companies not only cutting because of AI, but cutting because of the stock market. They're cutting because of what they call efficiency. They're cutting because they can. And that is spilling out over the economy. And it is a big danger right now because AI, like we said earlier, we don't know if that's going to be profitable, but it is going to be able to save companies money because it's going to be able to allow them to cut jobs. At what cost? We don't know. But here's a couple of the costs. One, I pick up the phone to try to call a company. It's no longer a human, it's a bot. I'm done with that company. I've moved on. I'll never use them again. Two, uh, this is not me, but people our children's, or your children's age, are struggling in the workforce. Hey, thanks, AI. You have not only turned me away from the company that I was doing business with, but now you're ensuring that the next generation is going to struggle and be frustrated when it comes to trying to get a job. This is really dangerous. And I think we need to follow up on this study weekly, monthly, yearly,
Yeah,
because this could be bad.
it could be real bad. And every year those kids are unemployed, besides living in our basements and everything else,
Right,
um, they're not getting training.
right,
They're not getting work experience. And so we've already, the youngest of these, they missed 2 years from an epidemic, going to school and socializing and all of that. And now we're going to put them on the unemployment rolls for a year or two or more, and they're not getting that experience. They've literally been locked out of modern life uh, for much of their lives. And when they can finally find a job, will they be ready for it? Will they be ready for all the other parts of having a career? It seems
right.
to me,
Not if we put it off for too long. And I think that's the danger, is allowing this fascination with machines doing human work to even play itself out without thinking of the collateral damage to actual humans.
I, I I want to throw in one thing because I think I talked about it last time, but a stock brokerage, they uh, they instituted AI, and they found that back in New York, they found that productivity went up 25% because people get tired at the end of the day, especially wired stockbrokers. But then the question was, did you fire any of those people? And they said no, because at some point, the human being, you're selling stock to human beings and you're dealing with human nature on stock prices. The human being has to come in and check what's going on and make a final decision. But now they're much more efficient because they're armed with all this information that if they'd had to find it themselves, they wouldn't have gotten there. So maybe that's the silver lining that we're looking for, that we're still going to need people because we're dealing with people. And the machines, in the best of all possible worlds, arm us better in our decision making. Or maybe I'm just blowing smoke and there's nothing to be optimistic about. Anyway, Scott, uh, have a great weekend. You can see Scott as always on NBC Bay Area, Facebook, and Twitter X. And you can see me for this week, next week, the last week of my BBC radio show. So if you get a chance and you're in Zimbabwe or something, tune into BBC World. Okay, and thank you very much and have a great weekend. Bye bye.